Okay, welcome back, Year 11. This is Mr. Hutchins again. We are now going to look through the first of the interpretations questions on paper 3, the Weimar and Nazi Germany question. By this point, you will have already done 3A, that's the source utility question, so you should be familiar with sources B and C on this paper. Now, just like with question 3A, this question here is looking at the extent of support for the Nazi regime. So the focus of the entirety of section B is the same. The whole of section B on this paper will be asking you about the extent of support for the Nazis in this time frame. Okay, now it starts off question 3B and then question 3C as well with two nice, quite short 4 markers that are a really good opportunity for you to generate some marks. So let's have a bit of a whistle-stop tour of this question so we can understand what it's asking us and then how we might go about answering it. So again, it asks us here to look at interpretations 1 and 2. Now, if you go to your source booklet, you will find right next to sources B and C the 2 interpretations. Now, an interpretation is an opinion of a historian. Okay, and just like with sources B and C, they are going to contrast one another. So one of them is going to talk about how there probably was quite a lot of support for Hitler. The other one is probably going to talk about how there wasn't much. All right, so these interpretations will always contrast. They will not agree with each other. Okay, so first thing we need to do is understand what the question is asking us. So it's asking us what the main difference is between the 2 interpretations. So what is the main difference between these 2 views? So we're looking for one thing that is the main difference, the key difference between the opinion of these 2 historians. It then says, explain your answer using details. So we must quote the interpretations. It's really, really important. Okay, so let's have a look first and see which one supports the fact that there was a lot of support for Hitler and which one disagrees and says actually there wasn't that much support for Hitler. And you can usually tell within the first couple sentences. So I'm going to get my highlighter, just something you need to do as well when you do it in the exam. We don't need the provenance here, so we can cross out the provenance, all right? We only need the provenance for the utility question. We don't need it for the interpretation, so you can scrap that entirely. So with my highlighter, I'm going to highlight anything that gives me an idea as to whether this is saying there is support or there isn't support. During the Third Reich, many Germans did not conform with the Nazi regime. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. So this first sentence tells me that this interpretation is negative, lack of support. Now, I don't even need to read the second interpretation yet. I automatically know, and we'll see if I'm proven right, that this one is going to say there was support. Okay, I can already make that guess. Being an examiner lets me know that that's probably the case. Now I'm just going to go through and I'm going to highlight certain quotes that back that up, that double down on that opinion. So this was shown by the fact that some people left the Nazi Party and others refused to give the Heil Hitler. Other people protested against Nazi control. So these are all things that demonstrate that lack of support, aren't they? These are quotes that might be useful if I'm trying to prove that there was a lack of support. Some Germans told jokes. So some Germans told jokes about the Fuhrer. Again, that proves a lack of support, doesn't it? While others listened to foreign radio stations or danced to American swing music. Naughty, naughty. That certainly was not allowed. Now, we'll do the same for interpretation 2. Again, I'm trying to find things here that might demonstrate that there was or wasn't support. In this case, I think this is going to be a positive one, saying there was support. Because remember, these do contrast. From 1933 onwards, the German people clearly conformed with the Nazi regime. So this one is giving the exact opposite view, isn't it? And those first sentences here, they even use the same language. That's a really nice contrast to highlight. Okay, and became devoted to Hitler. Hopefully we know that word. To be devoted is to be entirely dedicated to that person. Became entirely devoted to Hitler. Hundreds of thousands of Germans from different classes joined the Nazi Party. Okay, so we've got real evidence there that there was support. I like this word down here. A flood of people. A flood of people also joined other Nazi organizations. All right. Now, I'm not even going to read the rest of it because I don't need to. I've got enough quotes there to back up lack of support and positive support. So now I'm going to return to my question. So the main difference then is that they disagree on whether the Nazis had lots of support or whether they didn't. So that's going to be my first sentence. Okay, so the first sentence you need to write is to identify what the main view is. So the main difference is that interpretation 1 suggests a lack of support. And I'm going to use one of those lovely contrary connectives here, whereas interpretation 2 suggests there was support. Okay, so that'll get me 1 mark already. I've identified what the main difference in view is. I then need to give examples because remember it says use details from both interpretations. So I'm not going to write all this, I'm just going to talk you through it. So for example, interpretation 1 says, and then this is where I'm going to go to my lovely highlighted copy, and I'm just going to pull one of these lovely highlighted parts and then literally copy and paste it into here. Okay, I'm then going to do the same for interpretation 2. Okay, that's literally all you need to be doing for this source. Okay, that's it. You state the main difference. You then prove that interpretation 1 shows a lack of support with a quote. You then do the same for interpretation 2. Okay, now if you want to, you can summarize this with an extra sentence by saying this proves that the I'm just shortening this. This proves that the interpretations are different because. Okay, and then you may want to just say, well, it proves they're different because one's saying that there was conformity and the other one's saying there was conformity, one's saying there wasn't, something like that. Okay, but all you really need is summarize the key difference and then quote to support. Okay, and that is that first question. That is 3B on paper 3. Okay, if you are in Miss Lewis's group, can you please now have a go at finishing off those sentences? So can you now pull some quotes and drop them in here? Equally, I'd really like it if you could have a go at this last part. Okay, so Miss Lewis, if you could now guide your students through the remainder of this question. Off you go.